Hare Krishna. Welcome to today's session on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, chapters 4 to 7. So, the last week we saw the chapters 1 to 3, how Sutta Goswami was asked by the sages of Naimisharanya 6 different questions, and he asked all of them over the next two chapters until the chapter 3. Towards the end of the chapter 3, he mentioned that one of the answers for the question, like where has Dharma taken shelter, that he mentioned that Dharma has taken shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam after Krishna's disappearance. So the sages grabbed the opportunity to ask more about Srimad Bhagavatam and other details about Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami. So that's what we are going to see in this week. There is section 2 where majority of the history of Srimad, all of the history of Srimad Bhagavatam is majorly discussed in this chapters from 4 to 7. So the chapter is titled Appearance of Sri Narada Muni, which happens towards the end of the chapter. So this chapter has 33 verses. It could be divided into 3 sections where first initially the questions are asked by Shaunaka, and then in response to that, Sutta Goswami begins to describe about Vyasadeva writing Srimad Bhagavatam. Why did Srimad Bhagavatam was written by Srila Vyasadeva? So that history he begins to speak. So let's go into this, where the sages actually glorify Sutta Goswami for being such an amazing speaker, and then they request that can you please speak more about history of Srimad Bhagavatam, history of Srimad Bhagavatam, and also about Shukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. So in this way they ask questions to Sutta Goswami. So they ask 3 more questions. In the first chapter they asked 6 questions, all of which are answered. So now they are asking 3 more questions. What are the questions they ask in this chapter? One is about the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, why was it even compared by Vyasadeva? Because we know Vyasadeva compared all the Vedic literatures already. When, where, how, and whose inspiration, and what is the reason for his writing the Srimad Bhagavatam. And also we know Shukadeva Goswami is a great saint. He does not meet kings. So why did he come to meet Parikshit Maharaj? And then they ask about Parikshit Maharaj. We know that he is a great soul. He was saved by Krishna. But why did he had to die untimely, giving up all his kingdom in a way that he had to, like, unceremoniously give up his kingdom and go to fast to death? So in this way they ask these questions. So now these are the 3 questions asked as we saw. That Srimad Bhagavatam, when, where, how, and on whose inspiration did Vyasadeva compile it? And also Parikshit Maharaj's birth and activities and renunciation. And how was he perceived that, how did this meeting actually take place? So these 3 things, these 3 questions are asked by Sutta Goswami to by the sages of Naimisharanya. These will be answered in the 4th to 7th chapter. The history of Srimad Bhagavatam will be answered. From 7th till the 19th chapter, literally, it will all be about Parikshit Maharaj, or his birth, his activities, and renunciation. And specifically, Shukadeva Goswami will be discussed in the 18th and 19th chapter. So we will see them. So today we are going to see totally the history of Srimad Bhagavatam and a little bit about Parikshit Maharaj's birth, because the 7th chapter has both. So that's what we will see today about why did Vyasadeva compile Srimad Bhagavatam. So before that, we are beginning to see what led to the compilation of Srimad Bhagavatam by Vyasadeva. So here Sutta Goswami begins to speak. So he says that Vyasadeva once was meditating on the banks of Saraswati, river Saraswati, and he had a vision of various anomalies that will come up in Kali Yuga. He had different qualities of Kali Yuga that appeared in his meditation. So he saw how the bodily strength of people will be very decreased. They'll be generally faithless in terms of God consciousness, and they'll be very impatient due to lack of sattvagun. They'll be very dull-witted way. That means like less intelligent. Their lifespan will be reduced, and in general they'll be unlucky, durbhagan. So in this way, he sees these qualities and he develops compassion. How can I help the people of Kali Yuga? And he understands their memory is not going to be strong for them to pass on the Vedic literature through hearing and repeating. So he divides the Vedas, which were not put into writing so far, into four Vedic literature, four different Vedas, Rig, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva. And he also writes Puranas as the fifth Vedas for complementing the Vedic knowledge. And then he chooses particular sages, like he chooses Paila Rishi for Rig Veda, he chooses Jaimini for Samaveda, for Yajurveda he chooses Vaishampayana, and for Angira for Atharva Veda, and Puranas he chooses Romaharshi Rishi. In this way, he teaches particular disciples, and then those disciples teach to other people. In this way, this knowledge is passed down to the succession of different teachers. And then in this way, he edited the Vedas due to his compassion for all people to come in the age of Kali, so that they can benefit from this knowledge of Vedic literature. So in this way, he completely does his job, which is very like huge task. So he completes that. However, after completing the whole thing, Vyasudev's mind was dissatisfied. But in spite of engaging himself in working for the welfare of all people, by compiling all these Vedic literatures, his mind was very dissatisfied. So Vyasadeva started contemplating what would have gone wrong. So he was saying how he underwent strict disciplinary vows and then worshipped the Vedas, Guru, and the Supreme Lord, and abided by the rulings, and exhibited the import of all the Vedic disciplic succession through various literatures, including Mahabharata. So he has done enormous efforts to do the best that is possible in his capacity. And he says, though I am myself fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas, I am feeling incomplete. He says, whatever is required in the Vedas for a person to be perfect, I have all that competency. Still, why am I feeling dissatisfied? So in this way, he's saying, Kingva Bhagavata Dharmana Prayena Nurupita Kriya Paramahamsanam Tayeva Yakshita. This may be because I have not pointed out devotional service, which is dear to both the Supreme Lord and the devotees. He gets a doubt. Probably I didn't speak enough of devotional service in my Vedic literatures. That is why I'm feeling dissatisfied. When he is just thinking like that, according to the title of this chapter, which is the appearance of Srinarda, actually Nagmuni arrives. When he's just thinking what could be the reason, and the reason could be that my not speaking enough about devotional service could be a reason. When he thinks like that, Narada Muni actually arrives in the scene. So Vyasadeva sees his spiritual master arriving, so he gets up, welcomes, and worships him. So with this, the fourth chapter ends. Basically, the fourth chapter is the sages of Naimisharanya, headed by Shaunak Rishi, ask Sutta Goswami three questions. What is the history of Srimad Bhagavatam? What is the history of Parikshit Maharaj? And what is the history of Shukadeva Goswami? This is in short they ask. So Sutta Goswami begins to speak about the history of Srimad Bhagavatam first, because that is the first question asked by the sages. So he says, Vyasadeva, seeing the anomalies that will come in Kali Yuga, divides the Vedas and writes the Puranas and teaches it to his disciples. And in this way, he sets the transfer of the knowledge in motion. In spite of doing that, he feels dissatisfied. When he is contemplating, why am I feeling so dissatisfied? There appears his spiritual master, Narada Muni. So with this, the fourth chapter comes to a conclusion with the appearance of Narada Muni, which is the title of this chapter. So the next chapter is where Narada Muni is going to instruct his disciple Vyasadeva about what we will see. So this chapter has 33 verses. Does anyone have any question at this point? Does anyone have any question at this point we can take? Otherwise, we can. So here in the next chapter is Narada Muni instructing Vyasadeva. So this chapter has 33 verses. So basically, Nagini is going to inquire Vyasadeva, why is he feeling so dissatisfied? And Vyasadeva replies saying, that's what I want to know from you. So Nardamuni gives his diagnosis, and in the course of explaining his diagnosis, he also explains about his past life, and in this way he advises Vyasadeva to rectify his mistakes. So we will see all these details. So what is Narada Muni inquiring to Vyasadeva? So Devarshi Narada actually asked Vyasadeva, first thing he asks is, are you satisfied by identifying the body and mind to be the self? So immediately Vyasadeva gets an identity, gets a hint that this could be my problem. I spoke more about Dharma, Artha and Dhamma, but I did not speak about more about Bhakti. So then he asked, your inquiries and studies were actually complete, and you even wrote a great literature like Mahabharata. You have fully deliberated and realized this subject, because it is not just that you wrote about it and you have not realized that. You were actually realized in all this knowledge. So why you should be despondent still? This is the perfection of life. To achieve perfection of life, you wrote Vedic literatures, and after writing them, why are you feeling dissatisfied if they can award the perfection of life? So Vyasdev tells Narada, exactly, that's why I'm asking you what, that I am unable to find the reason for my despondency. Please tell me what is the root cause of my dissatisfaction. You're my spiritual master, you're like the super soul, you're like the sun who can enter anywhere. You know all the things. So please enter my heart and let me understand what is that which is causing me this dissatisfaction. You know everything. So please tell the deficiency. So in this way, he submits to Narada Muni, requesting him to understand his cause of his dissatisfaction. So the diagnosis that Narada Muni gives is you did not glorify the Supreme Lord sufficiently in your literature. The insufficient glorification of the process of devotional service and the Supreme Lord is the cause of your dissatisfaction. He says you also overemphasized the four Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha in the most of the Vedic literatures. Because of this, it's not helpful for the people in the long run. So, so he says, the only cause of bhakti is mercy of devotees. The glory of bhakti and its causes, Narada Muni explains to Vyasadeva. He says the only cause of bhakti is the mercy of devotees. So to illustrate the power of bhakti and its cause, Narada actually narrates his previous birth. So in this way he explains how bhakti is the only valuable asset, and progress in bhakti is like never lost. So why you are not explaining the glories of bhakti instead of overemphasizing dharma, artha, kama, and moksha? You should be actually speaking more about bhakti. So he says, describe the Lord's pastimes more vividly. Then this way he gives him a hint. And then he says, there is a reason for me to saying about this. Because the only cause of bhakti is the mercy of devotees. And to illustrate the power of bhakti and its cause, Narada narrates his previous birth actually. So he says how he came to this position of being the spiritual master of Vyasadeva, that is Narada. He says, in my previous life, I was son of a maid servant. A maid servant who was a widow. I was just far less than 5 years old when she engaged in the service of the Bhaktivedantas. In the 4 months of rainy season called Chaturmasya, the sages would not travel. They would just settle in one place because it's raining. And then they would do their bhajan in an intensified manner. So in this way, near his place, the few sages settled down. So his mother was engaging in their service. So because mother was engaging in the service, he was also naturally accompanying the mother and doing some service to these sages. And he says, by their mercy, I developed good qualities and faith. And he says he constantly engaged in their service, and also by their permission, with their permission, he tasted the remnants of food left by them. And in this way, he became completely sinless and developed taste for hearing and chanting. By eating the remnants of the food left by these sages, he became completely sinless and he developed an intense taste for hearing and chanting. In this way, he advanced in bhakti very quickly. He attentively heard the Krishna Katha. He came to the platform of Bhava and constantly heard from them and developed prema. So the sages saw that this particular boy is like so advanced. So before departing, the sages gave him a confidential mantra. Basically, they initiated him, and before leaving after the Chaturmasa was over. So in this way, they instructed him dedicate your activities for Lord's satisfaction. Remember his name and qualities. So in this way, they instruct Narada Muni to serve the Supreme Lord and to remember his names and qualities. So Krishna bestowed knowledge and his service upon me for my devotional service. So therefore, describe the Lord's glories, which will benefit everyone. There is no other way. So he says, in this way, I became I became like Narada Muni. So therefore, this is the power of association. Even a small son of a maid servant can achieve perfection of life by the association of devotees and by engaging in the process of devotional service. Please understand the glory of power of bhakti. Just a small, simple son of a maidservant could be bestowed the position of being the spiritual master of you, like Vyasadeva, someone like you who is the author of all the Vedic literatures. This is by the mercy of the Supreme Lord and the power of devotional service. So there is no other way than devotional service for the deliverance of people. So therefore, please describe the glories of the Supreme Lord and the process of bhakti, and which will actually benefit everyone. So in this way, he mentions his previous life, and then he is about to leave. So Narad Muni just told a little part of his life story. So Vyasadeva inquires more about Narad Muni's life. So Narad Muni explains in detail how he, whatever questions asked by Vyasadeva. So Narad Muni is asked by Vyasadeva, "Oh, what did you do after the departure of the Bhaktivedantas? You said that they initiated you and they left. So what did you do after their in initiation? How did you pass your life after initiation? How did you attain this position of being a son of a maidservant to Nardamuni? How did this transition happen?" And he also says, "How did you remember your previous life so vividly? It is very rare for anyone to remember their previous life so vividly. So it's been a very long time. So how do you even remember your previous life?" So in this way, Vyasdeva asked these questions. So, so after their departure, Narada Muni continues to explain that the sages initiated him and then they departed for the after the Chaturmasya. So he says, after they departed, when the Chaturmasya 4 months of rainy season was over, I was actually tied by the affection of my mother because he was the only son of a widowed mother. So mother was showing all the attention and affection for him. So he was saying it, he was tied by the affection of his mother. But somehow, unfortunately, by the arrangement of destiny, his mother died out of a snake bite. So the only person who was there to take care of him, his mother, also died. So considering this as a mercy of the Supreme Lord, Narad Muni actually travels north. In the Vedic tradition, traveling north means taking one's spiritual life seriously and then leaving home, basically leaving home to take the order of renunciation. That's what actually traveling north actually indicated in the past. So Narada Muni's travels, meditation, and the vision of the Lord is mentioned in the rest of the chapter. Narad Muni actually travels through towns and different forests, parks, avenues, cities, villages, everything. He just goes through a variety of places, not affected by any of them, not attracted to any of them. He just finally reaches a forest and there he meditates on the Super Soul. He achieves the vision of the Lord actually. After through his meditation on the Super Soul, he quickly achieves the vision of the Lord, and he is so overwhelmed that he finally is able to have the vision of the Supreme Lord in his heart, and suddenly the vision of the Supreme Lord disappears. So since he first time achieved success, he again tries to achieve the vision of the Supreme Lord. So many times he attempts, but he is unable to. So since he is continually making attempts, there is a voice spoke to him. The Supreme Lord spoke in an unembodied voice. Not in this lifetime, Narad Muni, that you will be able to see me again. I showed once to increase your desire, but now you have to actually purify yourself more in order for you to achieve me 100 completely. So he says time factor cannot destroy devotion service. So your memory will continue. You perform the meditation, you perfect your life, be freed of all contamination. In the next life, you will come to me. And time factor, because he says, Krishna says, time factor cannot destroy devotion service. So even your memory of being a maid servant will continue even in your future. In this way, the Lord actually specifically benedicts him to remember his past. And in this way, then Narada Muni, the voice actually stops, and Narada Muni continues to meditate. And then Narada Muni follows the Lord's instructions until his death, receives a spiritual body, and in the next day of Brahma, he becomes this liberated spaceman Narada Muni. So until when the next day of Brahma comes, he achieves this body of Narada Muni directly. So he says in this way, Narada Muni glorifies how Harikatha is the most suitable boat to cross the material ocean. He says there is nothing other than Harikatha which can help a person to cross this ocean. So he says service to Mukunda, the Supreme Lord, is higher than all other paths like karma and jnana and yoga. In this way, he glorifies the path of bhakti and says that Narada Muni instructs Vyasadeva directly and indirectly that please glorify more about devotional service. So in this way, after indicating to Vyasadeva his deficiency in writing the Vedic literatures, he departs while playing his veena. So this brings us to a place where now Vyasadeva has left, Narada Muni has left Vyasadeva with some instructions. So Sanukrishi asks, what did Vyasadeva do after Narada's departure? Now we have come to the second chapter, next chapter, chapter 7. Here Sanukrishi is asking, oh, what did Vyasadeva do after Narada's departure? Because um, Narada Muni said Vyasadeva too came to know about the process of devotional service. So again, Vyasadeva sits in a meditation on the banks of Saraswati. In this vision of Vyasadeva, he sees the Supreme Lord. You also see the external potency Maya, who is standing behind the Supreme Lord. So he says, he in this way, actually, he sees the suffering of the conditioned souls. Why is he seeing Maya in this vision? Because the significance of Vyasadeva seeing Maya is so that he can understand what is the suffering of the conditioned living entities and he can actually gain compassion. Yaya sammohito jiva atmanam trigunaatmakam paropi manute artham tatvutam chapitapyate. He is bewildered by the Lord's external energy consisting of three modes. A living entity actually misidentifies himself as a product of matter and thus he suffers. So this misidentification has to be given up, and that is possible through Bhakti Yoga. Anartho upashamam sakshat Bhakti Yoga madokshade lokasya janato vidvans chakre sapita samhitam. That is the reason that he wrote Chakre Sapita Samhitam. He writes Srimad Bhagavatam. Because by hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is long-term and short-term benefit. Yasyam Vaishyamanayam Krishna Param Purushe Bhaktirutpadate Punkam Shoka Moha Bhayapta. And eventually the person achieves Krishna Parama Purusha. He achieves Prema Bhaktirutpadate Punkam Shoka Moha Bhayapa. Shoka Moha and Bhaya, that is lamentation, illusion, and fear of the human beings are also dispelled. So he sees that is why he sees Maya, because the misidentification caused by Maya of the conditioned living entities with matter is the reason for their suffering. And how can that misidentification can be dispelled? That is only by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing the Supreme Lord's pastimes, that the misidentification can be cured. And only when the misidentification is cured, they can actually achieve complete devotion to the Supreme Lord by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Yastyam Vaishyamanaya. So in this way, Narada Muni sees uh, Maya in his vision because he had to understand the suffering of the souls and to develop compassion, and then he can offer a solution, effective solution to their suffering. So that effective solution is Bhakti Yoga. and he hearing about Krishna. So in this way, Vyasadeva understands the predicament of all the conditioned souls and then gives a solution. So he actually edits Srimad Bhagavatam to have all the glories of Krishna, and then he teaches, because now all the other Vedic literatures he has taught to different sages. Now that he has edited Srimad Bhagavatam, he has to teach to someone. For that he understands, because this is Amala Puran, this is actually a highly elevated subject matter. One whoever I should teach should also be qualified. So he teaches it to Shukadeva Goswami, who is the highly highest elevated sage. So he says that's why he teaches Srimad Bhagavatam to Shukadeva Goswami, and Shravana Rishi actually asks, "Oh, why?" Because Shukadeva Goswami was already liberated. He was completely immersed in the Brahman conception, and he was aloof from everything in this world. How did he teach to Shukadeva Goswami? So Shukadeva Goswami says, even liberated souls are attracted by Srimad Bhagavatam. Atmaramas chamunayo nirgrantha apiyurukrame kurvantya haikutim bhakti nittam bhuta gunamahari. In this way, he quotes this famous verse saying, even great liberated sages are attracted to the glories of Krishna. Nittam bhuta gunamahari. They are also attracted by the qualities of Krishna, how he is merciful, how he is bhaktavatsal, how he is loving to his devotees. These qualities of Krishna even attracts the greatly liberated souls. So in this way, Sutta Goswami completes the history of Srimad Bhagavatam, that why Srimad Bhagavatam was written, and and how Vyasadeva, like what Nadamuni told him, and why Vyasadeva, how did he write, and then whom did he teach it to. So in this way, the cyclic succession of Srimad Bhagavatam is also mentioned. In this way, Sutta Goswami actually completely replies this question by the sages of Shaunaka Adi Rishis from the chapter 4 chapter about the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. He has completely discussed those things. So now he has to go to the next question. They asked three questions. One question was, what is the history of Srimad Bhagavatam? The second question was, what is the history of Parikshit Maharaj? And the third question was, how did Shukadeva Goswami meet Parikshit Maharaj? So now he has answered the first question. So he has to start the second question, which is about Parikshit Maharaj. So he begins to speak about Parikshit Maharaj. And then events leading up to his birth is also discussed. So in this chapter, he speaks a little bit about Parikshit Maharaj. And from this chapter until the chapter 12, he discusses about different events leading up to his birth. And from 12, we will again see his birth. So events leading up to his birth is Ashwatthama actually attempts to kill Parikshit in the womb of Mother Uttara. I hope everybody is a little bit acquainted with Mahabharata. See, after the end of the Mahabharata war, on the other side of the Duryodhan, only Ashwatthama and a handful of others were left. So Ashwatthama was taking revenge towards the Pandavas, because they not only killed his father, but they also killed the whole army. So in this way, he lost everyone. So he was very angry. So to take revenge, he wanted to kill the last surviving heir of the Pandavas. So, and Lord Krishna saves him in the womb. So we will see before that what happens. In the chapter 7, Ashwatthama is punished by Arjuna for a different reason. And from chapter 8, Ashwatthama takes revenge. So we will gradually see one by one. So to just sum up where we are, so far we saw how Vyasadeva wrote Srimad Bhagavatam in the first section of the chapter 7. And from now we are going to see about how Parikshit Maharaj actually, about Parikshit Maharaj, what are the events that led to his birth, that happened before his birth, like that. Okay. So the lamentation for Pandava's sons is the section discussed first in this section, because this sets the scene for Parikshit Maharaj's birth. Ashwatthama actually, to take revenge at the end of after the end of the Mahabharata war, comes to kill the Pandavas, but instead kills the sleeping sons of Draupadi, mistaking them for Pandavas. And Draupadi is very distressed because she lost all her 5 sons. So Arjuna was to kill whoever did this, which is Ashwatthama, whoever caused this murder of all the sons of Draupadi. He says, I will vow to kill that person. And In this way, Arjuna actually chases Ashwatthama. When Ashwatthama sees that Arjuna is chasing him out of fear, he releases Brahmastra. Brahmastra is a very powerful weapon, uh, which was taught to Ashwatthama by his father Dronacharya. But since Ashwatthama was not fully qualified, Dronacharya did not teach him how to retract the weapon. He only taught him how to release the weapon. He didn't teach him how to retract the weapon. But Ashwatthama, in spite of not knowing how to retract, just to protect him, he releases the Brahmastra. So there is a glaring light which covers all the place. So Arjuna prays to Krishna, and Krishna in response says that Ashwatthama has caused this, and then he nullifies the Brahmastra with his Sudarshan Chakra. And in that way, Arjuna arrests Ashwatthama. So he binds Ashwatthama and then brings to the assembly of the Pandavas, where Draupadi and all the other Pandavas are there, like Bhima, Yudhishthira, and everyone. So when Draupadi sees her, the son of Drona being tied up and the reason for his son's death, she actually is, she feels very sad because when Arjuna brings him, so Krishna advises to kill him, but Arjuna brings him to Draupadi to decide what she wants to do. And Draupadi suddenly has a change of heart and wants to forgive because her reasoning was he is first of all a Brahmin. He is the son of your guru, your military arts guru, Dronacharya. And I have lost all my sons. I'm in a critical situation. But Drauni, his mother, she has already lost her husband, and the only support that she has is her son Ashwatthama. So if you kill him, Drauni will become both a widow. She has already become a widow. Now she will also become a childless mother. So I'm already experiencing the pain of being child and having my children killed. So I don't want to cause the same pain to Ashwatthama's mom. So let us spare him. And he is also a Brahmana. We should not be killing him. But Bhima disagrees. He says no. He is not just a Brahman. He is actually a Brahma Bandhu for indulging in such an activity as killing some kids who were like killing younger kids while sleeping is actually an unforgivable offense. So for that, he has already lost his status as Brahmana. And in this way, he says, wish he should be killed. So Krishna says, now Draupadi wants to forgive him. Bhima wants to kill him. You have vowed that you will kill whoever is the killer of the five sons of Draupadi. So now you decide, Arjuna, what is the suitable punishment you can make out to Ashwatthama. So Arjuna punishes suitably by actually cutting his hair and depriving him of his. He has a special jewel, all that he severs from his head. In this way, he actually makes him powerless and then leaves him in a, and then he shaves his mustache like that. So in this way, he actually disrespects Ashwatthama. And for a Brahmin, disrespect is considered also as equivalent to death. So in this way, he actually leaves. Arjuna actually punishes Ashwatthama in a proper way. A Brahmana could be punished. So in this way, Pandavas and Draupadi, they are all overwhelmed with grief, and they perform proper rituals for the dead relatives along with their dead sons. So from the next week, we will see what happened. What did Ashwatthama do? Now he was punished and left. So what does he do afterwards? Does he take revenge again? And how is this affecting Parikshit Maharaj? Because we were about to see the birth of Parikshit Maharaj. And it seems Ashwatthama was connected to it. But in this chapter, nothing has come up because in the next chapter, how is Parikshit Maharaj's birth related? How is Ashwatthama related to Maharaj Parikshit's birth? That we will see in the next chapter. So, in a short recap today, in a few minutes, whatever we saw is in the first canto, first section, where chapters 1 to 3, we saw Sudha Goswami was asked 6 questions by the sages. While answering on the last question, he mentioned that Srimad Bhagavatam is where the Dharma has taken shelter in the age of Kali after Krishna's disappearance. So the sages wanting to know more about Srimad Bhagavatam question Sutta Goswami in the chapter 4 beginning. Oh, please explain to us the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. And please also tell us about more about Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami. So in this way, they ask these three questions, and in response to that question, Sita Goswami explains the history of Srimad Bhagavatam from chapter 4 to 7. He says how Vyasadeva in his meditation sees the anomalies of Kali Yuga, decides to write down the Vedic literatures, divide them, and write it into Vedic, like Rig, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva, and the Puranas. Teaches it to his disciples. In this way, he completes his work, but still feels very dissatisfied and wonders why am I feeling very dissatisfied? Maybe because I didn't write enough of devotional service. And Narada Muni comes at that point of time and then explains to Vyasadeva why he's feeling that kind of despondency. He says bhakti is the ultimate process by which one can feel satisfied. And not writing about it enough is the reason you're feeling dissatisfied. He says don't consider bhakti as simple. It's a simple but effective process which can even make a son of a maid servant into Narada Muni, your spiritual master. So he recounts his previous life, and then he says four different sages were staying when I was a son of a maid servant in my previous life, and by serving them and hearing in their association, I developed prema, and in this way they initiated me. And after they left, I got this achievement. I achieved the perfection of life. So please understand the power of bhakti and write more about exclusively glorify bhakti. And he was ready to depart. Vyasdev says, "Oh, my dear spiritual master, you said that you achieved this position of Narada Muni because of the devotion service performed in the previous life. What did you do after the initiation, after the sages left, after the Chaturmasya? And how do you remember even the previous life?" So further Narada Muni explains, after they left, my mother also died of a snake bite. So I left home and I went and meditated and had the vision of the Supreme Lord, but it disappeared. The vision of the Supreme Lord disappeared. I tried again many times, but could not achieve it again. So the Supreme Lord spoke to me in an unembodied form that in this life you won't see me again. And if you purify yourself fully, in the next life you will achieve perfection. In this way, he disappeared. So I perfected my life. And when I left my body, then in the next day of Brahma, I received this form of Narada Muni, your spiritual master. And by the grace of the Lord's benediction, I remember my previous life. So in this way, he completes the thing and then leaves. So Vyasadeva again sits in meditation on the banks of Saraswati, sees the Supreme Lord, his external energy, the suffering of the conditioned souls, and writes more about the glories of devotional service and teaches it to Shukadeva Goswami. So this is all about the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the next question the sages asked was about Maharaj Parikshit. So to set the scene for Maharaj Parikshit's birth, Shukadeva Goswami starts, Sudha Goswami begins to speak how Ashwatthama killed the five sons of Draupadi, and Arjuna goes to punish him, and in that process he becomes fearful and releases Brahmastra, and Krishna counteracts that Brahmastra, and Arjuna arrests Ashwatthama, brings him back to the place where Draupadi and the Pandavas are there, and they all have a disagreement whether to kill him or not. Finally, Arjuna just disrespects him by severing his hair and the jewel that he has, and in this way he disrespects him, suitable to punishing a Brahmana, and then releases him. Now that Ashwatthama is being disrespected and released, he will go back to take again revenge. So what he does when after he is released, how does he try to take revenge on the Pandavas again? That we will see the next week in chapter 8, beginning from chapter 8. So thank you all very much for joining today's session. If you have any questions, we can take at this point, or we can finish the session. Okay. Thank you all for joining today's session. Thank you.
Hi, Gautam Prabhu.
Yes, bro.
So when Vyasadeva wrote Mahabharata, he had already described Krishna in the Gita. So
Yes.
didn't that count?
but
Is it
he has
about glorifying Lord, about the Lord?
yeah. Mahabharata has actually, like if you see the Bhagavad Gita has like 700 verses, but the Mahabharata has like a lakh verses, which is like nothing in compared to that. And in this intriguing political drama, actually Mahabharata takes a very backstage. If you read the whole Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita takes like a little bit of a
Mm-hmm.
place. And it is not the whole book is always glorifying Krishna or anything like that. It has so many different kinds of pastimes, Nalada Mayanti, this, that, glorifying different aspects, going to heaven and all these things. So it's not very clear. It's not just pinpointing about, okay, goal of life is devotion service. Performing bhakti is the only goal of life. That kind of a clarity is not there in any of these literatures. Even there are other Puranas which speaks about Supreme Lord, Vaikuntha, even Radharani. However, the clarity or focus is not very clear. But if you come to Srimad Bhagavatam, it's like in its present form, it is like it's absolutely clear that the purpose of life is to perform devotion service to Krishna. Episode after episode, it actually establishes that fact very clearly. This kind of a clarity is not there in Mahabharata, even though it may have just Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the essential teachings of the Supreme Lord. Still, the whole book does not have kind of a clarity.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, boss. Thank you for joining, taking your time. We will see you next week.